Welcome to the February 17th, 2011 meeting of the Fayetteville Telecommunication Board. And the first order of business will be to call the roll. And we have a quorum, so unlike a couple of past meetings, seems like in the last few months, we actually have an official roll call. Mr. Cousinelli is absent at the moment. Mr. Davis?
Present.
And Mr. Leader?
Present.
And Mr. Pennington?
Here.
And Mr. Russell is known to be planning to be absent. And Mr. Spencer? Well, I haven't met Mr. Spencer, and I was hoping to meet him by now, or tonight at this moment. Anyway, stepping forward on the, well, what I listed to do at this moment was to welcome the new members, and we do have one of them here. So welcome. Would you tell us a few words about yourself?
Oh, what do you want to know, Mr. Shepherd?
Well, what's your interest in this particular board and work or anything else you want to tell us about?
I found the
grandchildren?
Rather fascinating. Grandchildren, right? I worked for Best Buy for 6 years on their corporate sales team, and did all sorts of stuff in the technology field for government and education and small to medium-sized businesses. And that really kind of opened my eyes to all sorts of communications as well as technology field. And now that that's slowing down a little bit, it's given me some time to volunteer and serve, and I thought this would be a good venue to do it. So. Well, good. The Best Buy always has a good technical team, don't they, as well as an effective sales team? Yes, sir, that would probably be accurate.
Well, thank you for joining the board. And to those who previously served and are not here now, I would like to say thank you for what they did while they were here. And I know one member hadn't been able to attend for a good while, but we hope that, I know his health is getting better, and maybe someday he'll come back and join the board when we have an opening. Okay, the next thing would be to approve the October and December 2010 minutes. I believe those are the two that we ended up with in the packet. Anything to quibble about on those, gentlemen?
I move the minutes be approved as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, on the agenda, which you now have an opportunity to look at, is there anything in particular you would like to add, or we can delete as we go along if you choose? But
I'd like to discuss at least our meeting location. As much as I like meeting in the city council chambers, it's a bit imposing, I would imagine, for some audience members. And I think we're the only board that actually meets in here. So,
well, actually, the planning commission always meets here.
Okay. Well, I'd like to add that as
how many years?
Okay. I'd move that we add a brief discussion after point 7 on our meeting location.
Okay. All right. Okay, on the adoption of this agenda then, did we just agree to that before you?
I made a motion to
And I can
amend.
second that motion.
And I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Government channel television report.
Good evening, gentlemen. It has been quite a while since we've had an opportunity to have a full meeting of the board, which I appreciate very much that we're all here tonight. One of the things that you'll have from me this evening, as well as from Ms. Shelley from your media, is our annual reports, which we have not been able to have an opportunity to present to the board and to the public. You have a copy of mine in your packet. What I would like to do, with your permission, is go through this report for the public that will be watching this meeting subsequent to this evening. 2010 was a great year, proved to be another eventful and fruitful year for the City of Fayetteville Television Center and access television programming for the residents of Fayetteville. In the last year, we've continued to make improvements in technology, programming, and service to our citizens. This is a recap of our major accomplishments for the year 2010. This is not a comprehensive listing of all the things we've done to serve our citizens and our administration this past year. We continue to produce and telecast an average of 30 meetings of city boards, commissions, and committees every month, including the City Council, the Planning Commission, budget meetings, public input sessions, in addition to providing meeting support for mayor's town hall meetings that are held in various locations around the city. We also provide all the technical, engineering, and facility support for the entire operation at the television center. We support and manage the efforts of our contracted public access television services provider, Your Media. We are staff support for you, the Telecommunications Board, and we provide video communication and presentation consulting services for every department in the city administration. Some of the significant, most visible changes that were made in the operation of the access channels in the television production facility in 2010. Number one, the name of the production and telecast facility is now the City of Fayetteville Television Center, to more accurately reflect the city's role in providing access television services. Two, the name of the public access channel is now Fayetteville Public Access Television, to more accurately reflect the city's role in providing public access television services to the residents of Fayetteville and the city's stewardship of this channel. The migration of the Education Channel, the Government Channel, and Fayetteville Public Access Television, channels 14, 16, and 18, to the digital transmission format on Cox Communication Cable Systems, channels 217, 216, and 218, respectively, resulting in the Fayetteville Public Schools getting a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week access and use of the Education Channel. Number four, the physical layout and configuration of the television center has been modified to create a more open and welcoming environment and provide more enhanced service to the residents of Fayetteville. In 2011, our plans include to continue to upgrade and support the infrastructure of our production facility, enhance our programming and program scheduling, find better ways to utilize technology to expand our services, increase the viewership of the access channels, and provide more information for our citizens. The staff at the City of Fayetteville Television Center is proud to be a part of the city's public service communication efforts and an essential part of the administration's efforts to make Fayetteville government more accessible and understandable to its citizens. Among our accomplishments in service in 2010, the staff at the City of Fayetteville Television Center examined its production, programming, and communications efforts to increase our service to our citizens in 2010 with no increase in budget or personnel. Among our accomplishments that we're proud of, we established an additional distribution channel, thereby making the government channel programming accessible through live streaming on the internet, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, easily accessed through the city's website at accessfayetteville.org. We took responsibility for the technical and programming support for the city's digital signage installations. We established a digital signage installation in the new district court building. We provided video production and distribution support for the educational component of LEED certification for the district court building. This was instrumental in attaining the building's LEED Gold certification. We played a key role in the migration of the access channels to digital transmission on the Cox Communications cable system. The migration was accomplished with no technical issues and a total of 5 documented complaints, all of which were resolved satisfactorily. We were involved in and assisted with the Public Access Television Services request for proposal process to recruit an organization to provide enhanced public access television services for the city. We assisted and wrote, revised, and assisted in the negotiations to finalize the 2011 contract for the public access television operator for the City of Fayetteville. We assisted in developing and implementing a new structure and definition for the public access outsource provider and for Fayetteville Public Access Television. We provided consulting services for technology-related and video communications projects such as City Plan 2030, Today in America, and the city's IT assessment project. And we provided meeting support services for meetings such as mayor's town hall meetings, press conferences and presentations, and we provided meeting support equipment to various users in the city administration. Among our accomplishments in programming, the staff at the City of Fayetteville Television Center is very proud of its accomplishments in programming for the year 2010. This year, the government channel won national recognition for its programming, garnering 3 Bronze Telly Awards. In addition to national award-winning programming, the staff at the City of Fayetteville Television Center has provided programming that continues to set the bar for government channel programming in the region. Some examples include the Green Your Life series, which presents information and tips about environmentally sustainable living. PSAs, those are public service announcements, and other programming that helps the city meet the communication component of its agreements to help improve water quality with the Beaver Water District. We produce promotional announcements and other programming support to motivate participation in the City Plan 2030 input sessions. The feedback that I received from the leaders of those sessions indicated to me that those promotional announcements greatly enhanced their participation in those input sessions. We had the addition of an interview format program where the mayor highlights a city department or program. We call that the Mayor's Corner. And every week he comes down to the studio and records an interview with a city department head or division head that helps inform our citizens about what these departments of the city do specifically. Like, we had a great program with Terry Gully, who's the director of the transportation department, right in the middle of when we were going through all of the inclement weather in the last few weeks, to help the citizens understand how the transportation department helps keep our streets clear and goes and attacks those issues as those things come up to help keep our citizens safe. And we've expanded the use of the message board on our on-air message and bulletin board as a communication tool used by more city departments than ever before. In addition to these specific accomplishments, the staff at the Fayetteville Government Channel produced the following in 2010. We produced and telecast 359 government meetings. That's an average of 30 a month. We produced and telecast 230 public service programs, an average of 19 a month. We produced 2 internal communications programs. Those are programs that we don't telecast on the government channel itself, but the production and technical crew at the television center produce those programs for internal communication. That could be something like a training program or a communication program. I would also like to point out, among those 230 public service programs, what we include in those are things that are not governmental meetings, like this board or the Planning Commission or City Council. We recorded and telecast several times every single one of the over 16 public input sessions regarding the paid parking program that was implemented on Dixon Street. And we feel that that played a key role in helping our citizens become informed and stay informed through that entire process as that was implemented and as that was developed. We created and displayed 1,330 new bulletin board messages. These are single screen messages that go up on the bulletin board, on-air bulletin board, that can include information about upcoming meetings, meeting schedules, events that might be happening at the library, and agenda information for meetings that occur throughout the city. That's an average of 111 a month, or almost 4 for every day of the year. And we performed 1,873 DVD duplications. That includes several hundred for our continued process of converting our archival library from VHS tape to DVD for archival purposes. We also had several accomplishments that we're proud of in the area of technology for the City of Fayetteville Television Center. We continue to make improvements in our telecasting and production technology. Our goal continues to be and always will be to provide a technologically current teaching and production facility for use by both the public and city staff. I would like to point out that the City of Fayetteville Television Center is not just a telecast facility, it's not just a production facility, it's also a teaching facility. We continue to conduct in that facility with our public access outsource provider, Your Media. They have developed an unbelievable class schedule, and as we speak, in February of 2011, they're conducting anywhere from six or more free classes every week at the television center to help our residents learn how to create video programming. So we're not just a place where you make televisions, a place where you learn how to do it as well. If you're a resident of Fayetteville, you can come down and take free classes and then use equipment that is there free. In our accomplishments in technology, we replaced the telecast automation controller. That was causing us some very significant issues at the first part of the year, as other people that were on the board previous were aware that was something that we were having significant issues with. This has resulted in almost eliminating system-related downtime and telecast failures due to controller and playback system issues. The channel uptime has increased to nearly 99%. This system has also reduced administration time by nearly 75%, freeing up personnel resources needed to enhance other services. This was one of the key components as we look through our accomplishments in 2010 and we try to find out, well, how did we do all of this stuff with no increase in budget, no increase in personnel? We maximize our advantages that we have of technology. This was a key component, replacing the automation controller for our telecasting. That 75% improvement in administrative time went directly to providing other services to our citizens. The system has also allowed us to enhance those services because, again, we freed up more time and we don't have to spend as much time. Many of us don't have to spend as much time trying to figure out what in the world happened this time. With the old one, it was something that happened on way too much of a continuous basis. We designed, obtained, and installed new industry current video editing systems, which are now standardized throughout the facility. Previously, we had several different kinds of editing systems that were difficult to support. They were difficult to keep maintained, and they were difficult to keep current. We were given a one-time budgetary award from the City Council that allowed us to upgrade our editing systems. They're industry standard. I would put them up against any regional post-production house or television station. I would venture to say that any regional production facility anywhere in this area would be envious of the editing systems that we have. Those editing systems, there are 3 of those that are in that television center that are available free for public use. All you have to do is get certified to use it through a free class. You can come down and use them for free. We designed, obtained, and installed a new audio production and control system for the studio. We remodeled and reconfigured our studio control room production equipment to allow for greater production flexibility. And we reconfigured our telecasting engineering infrastructure, enhancing our stability and reliability. And we created new and repurposed control and monitoring equipment in the telecast system, enhancing our technical quality, which is also always one of those things that is a high priority for us. In our accomplishments in management, the management of the City of Fayetteville Television Center accomplished several key initiatives in 2010, including redefinition of the role of the outsourced public access services provider, resulting in enhanced services for residents and a more clear management structure for the Fayetteville Public Access Television Channel. Writing, revising, negotiation, and approval of the 2011 contract with Community Access Television for outsourced public access television services. We researched development and obtaining City Council approval for new operational policies for the government channel. Continued transferring of the program archive from videotape to DVD. As of the end of 2010, the process is approximately 3/4 of the way completed, with over 2,000 programs we've transferred from videotape to DVD that will be able to be maintained in our archives for many, many, many years to come. We've enhanced service programming and production capacity with no increase in operational budget. We've continued our evaluation and assessment of the technical infrastructure of the television center, continued our evaluation and assessment of the government channel work processes. Our goal is always to try to figure out ways to leverage technology to enhance our services to our residents, to our city administration, and to our citizens. The mission of the City of Fayetteville Television Center is to be a best-in-class municipal television production and telecast facility, provide an industry current teaching facility for the residents of Fayetteville, and to provide a place where Fayetteville residents may tell and share their stories through the medium of video and television. The mission of the Fayetteville Government Channel is to make Fayetteville government more accessible and understandable to the citizens of Fayetteville, to inform residents on city government, government services, and community life, and to facilitate the exchange of public information. We will continue to strive to accomplish our mission throughout 2010 and beyond, and 2011 and beyond, and to become an even more effective resource for the city administration and our citizens. As I like to say to our customers and staff, let's make television. That is my report for 2010. Members of the board, I appreciate your listening and your attention. And do you have any questions?
I think you've done a fantastic job at the Television Center. Obviously, the report that you've given shows the successes that you've had there. I want to thank you for the tour that you gave us last week in the orientation session, or 2 weeks ago, and thanks for the materials. So I fully intend to come down and become a qualified producer for free, just so I can try out that editing equipment for free.
Well, we look forward to it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll second that. The report you gave is unbelievable, and some of the things y'all have accomplished this year is great stuff. And I'm gonna take you up on that as well and come down and visit with you. And I hope to get one of these nice binders as well. Sorry I missed out. I thought we were snowed in and or snowed out, however you want to put that. Mm-hmm. But I definitely want to come down and
I would like to
visit.
encourage anybody that any member of the public, if at any time they wish to have an informal tour of the facility, talk to any of the staff down there about what we do, they're more than welcome to call. The number for the Television Center is area code 479-444-3434. The telephone number for the Fayetteville Public Access Television operation that's operated by Your Media is area code 479-444-3433. You'll be hearing from Ann Shelley, the Executive Director of Your Media, later in this meeting. She'll also be providing you with an annual and first quarter report, I believe, or a monthly report for January. It's not the end of the first quarter yet. I do have a few other things specific that I would like to share with you regarding some of the things that we're doing at the Television Center and some of the things that we're looking at in the future, in the very near future, if that's all right at this point in time. One of the first things that I'd like to share with you is that we're scheduling a day where both the staffs of both organizations are going to get together. And on a Saturday, we're going to spend basically a work day where we're going to do a lot of spruce up and clean up. We've gotten approval to do some very minor renovations to the Television Center that will occur later this year, probably around late summer, as building services can free up the time and their resources to be able to do that. We're going to reconfigure a couple of walls and maximize some more space utilization down there. And I think that's one of the things that we're always trying to do, is figure out how we can use space more effectively. It's a small space, but we try to make it work as best as possible. We did create a classroom because we have increased our classes so significantly that we felt it was appropriate to take a space and create a classroom specifically for that. And it will be a dedicated use space for that. And we want it to be warm, and we want it to be welcoming, and we want it to be conducive to good training. So we're going to be doing some painting. We're going to be doing some touching up on some stuff. And so that's exciting for us to be able to do that. And we also like to be able to pitch in, and it really creates a sense of ownership for the staff. And before I go too far with that, I do want to give great kudos to the city staff for their work in 2010, and the staff of the public access operator, formerly Community Access Television, now Your Media. They continue to be a partner, a great partner in this effort that we have going forward. The first full week of March, I am going to implement a new program schedule that I gave to you in your addendum. One of the things that we have been, that we set a goal to accomplish in 2010. We were not able to accomplish this goal in 2010 because of some issues and because of some things that were higher priority to deal with. But this has been a goal that has been since the beginning of 2010, and that is to establish a regular program schedule. And what I mean by regular program schedule is that our citizens and our viewers can rely on a program being telecast essentially the same time, all the time. Right now, we don't have a real stable programming schedule. It's been one of those things that's been somewhat problematic to develop, and the reason for that is that meetings have variable lengths. You know, we might have a meeting that lasts 20 minutes. We might have a meeting that lasts 2 hours. Last city council meeting lasted 5.5 hours. So it can be a challenge to schedule around those kinds of things. But we put our heads together as a staff and we met that challenge because we felt like to enhance our viewers' experience, it would be good for us, for them to know every Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon is airport board meeting. You'll be able to set your DVR by it. I'm not going to say VCR anymore. I don't think anybody has VCRs anymore. But you would be able to set a recording by that. Now, what you're looking at here is a 12-hour schedule. It goes from noon to midnight. This 12 hours from noon to midnight will repeat from midnight to noon. So anything that you see here that says PM after it will also be on AM. Why is that? Because we have people that work second shift, we have people that work third shift, people that watch the government channel, and we want them to be able to have an opportunity to watch programming when it's convenient for them, and we also want them to have an opportunity to have to see it multiple times. What you'll see on this is you'll see a program schedule that repeats every week. So every week at every Thursday at 6 p.m. will be a quorum court meeting. Now, the reason for that is quorum court is actually it's the third Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. And we carry it live because it's a legislative body. Something we've been doing for a long, long time. Because it's live on a particular Thursday, and we want it to be something where our viewers will know that every Thursday night at 6 p.m., whether it's live or whether it's recorded, I can tune in on Thursday at 6 p.m. and watch quorum court. I can tune in on, I should have highlighted this one because it's this board's meeting. Every Wednesday at 4 p.m., every Wednesday at 4 p.m., I can tune in and watch the telecommunications board meeting. Every Wednesday at 4 a.m., I can tune in and watch the telecommunications board meeting. And we have plenty of space in this program schedule for every meeting to be telecast twice a week, which actually ends up with meetings like the telecommunications board that meets once a month. The telecommunications board meeting will actually be telecast 8 times every month. From one meeting to the next month's meeting, there will be 8 telecasts of that meeting. And we think that really enhances our viewers' experience because they have a lot of opportunities to watch it. It also gives us a lot of space. If you'll notice on Sunday is pretty blank. Well, we have long format programs that our viewers like to see. For example, the Gully Park concert series that we telecast every summer. They like to see those. Well, we need big blocks of time to do something like that. So that's why we have Sunday. First question that comes to mind is you see a week A and a week B. The only difference between week A and week B is on Tuesday evenings. And if you'll look at that real quickly. On week A, City Council, the week A schedule is when we carry the City Council meeting live, and that's at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays. On week B, we carry the City Council agenda session on Tuesday afternoon at 4:30. We carry that live. And not to get too confusing, but the live City Council agenda session will be for the following week's City Council meeting. So we can't follow that agenda session with the previous week's City Council meeting without it being confusing. So what we did is we put a 2-hour block of informational programming in between them to prevent that confusion or to help alleviate that confusion. And that's the only difference from week to week that we'll see. This will provide many, many advantages, not just for our viewers, but for our staff as well. This, as I'm sure you can see, if we're using the same program schedule every week, the staff member who is actually programming the automation controller, it makes it much easier for that staff member because they have essentially a template to go by. And they don't have to think about recreating a program schedule, a new program schedule every week, which is where we are now. It also opens up the possibility for us to start producing and telecasting what we call promotional announcements. So we could have a station ID that says something like, Telecommunications Board, 4 p.m. Wednesdays on the Fayetteville Government Channel. And what does that do? That enhances our viewers' experience. It also gives us an opportunity to be more consistent with our message boards, and gives us an opportunity to be more consistent with our communication regarding our telecast schedule. This board meeting meets at 5:30 the third Thursday of every month. The meeting will play just as consistently as this board meets. And that'll be the same for every single city board. This is a schedule you see every board meeting that we have is on this schedule. So this is what we're going to implement coming forward in the first week of March. And we think that so one question is, why did it take so long to do it? I mean, it was a goal that we set for the beginning of 2010. We worked very hard on this, and we run into some roadblocks, but eventually we got to a point where we figured out how to overcome every one of those challenges. But we wanted to make sure that when we did do it, we did it right. And we didn't want to go into this thinking that when we implemented it, it was going to be half done. So we worked it, we tested it again. We really believe we have identified all of the red flags, all the things that might cause an issue to implement this, and we're good to go forward. And that's why it's taken a little bit longer than we first expected to do so. Do you have any questions regarding that?
First question, please, is when does the city council meets at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, as always, of course. When is the first rerun of it?
The first rerun of the city council meeting?
Right.
Would be the next morning at 6 a.m. The very next morning.
Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning.
So
I don't
on
see it
week
here.
A, he's saying like on week A,
Oh, okay, I see
if
what
it's
you're saying.
broadcast live, is it going to be replayed at 6 a.m. the next morning?
Actually, it won't be replayed 6 a.m. the next morning. It would be replayed a week later.
A week later?
Yes, sir.
You know, people get up and read the newspaper story, and back 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, the council meeting replayed at 9 a.m. the very next morning when it's still news. And people got this little summary in the newspaper with a little bit of space they have. And for instance, the meeting this week, what was it, 5.5 hours?
5.5 hours, yes, sir.
And I don't know how many times has it been rerun this week.
I would have to go back and check I would have to go back and check the schedule.
I watched, but what we've been doing most recently was running it the following evening at the same time, on Wednesday evening.
No, that's not been a standard practice. No, it
Since
hasn't.
when? I mean, how long have we not been doing that?
I would have to go back and check our programming schedules.
But a year and a half ago or whatever, we were still running it, or 2 years ago, we were still running it at 9 a.m. the next morning. And that's one of the things that this station has. We give complete reports, gavel to gavel meetings.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And there's no other way to get that information. Maybe on the internet, maybe for some people, and I know Granicus wasn't replaying everything or wasn't playing live a week or so ago. Would you tell us while we're at it what happened there? Did you find out what the bug was?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, be glad to. Basically, it was equipment failure. The computer the piece of technology that encodes the video and audio that creates the digital files then people can subsequently watch as streaming or video on demand. That particular piece of equipment failed, and we actually had it scheduled. We had the part overnighted, and we got hit with a snowstorm. And the information technology staff member showed me the route that took, but it was 2 days before we could get that back online. It is now back online. We're back streaming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we also have full video on demand capabilities with all that as well. Which I would also point out that every one of the meetings that we do is uploaded and available on Granicus within 48 hours of when the meeting has occurred through the video on demand service. And that is also an important part of how this would be implemented, because that is available for people to utilize. We also provide at no charge DVD copies of meetings for people. At the end of every meeting that is telecast, we have informational credits that say on every meeting, for a DVD copy of this meeting, call 444-3434. And those copies are available at no charge.
Well, I can't imagine not running the council meeting as many times as it's been historically in the last. I know in 2008, they were running 7 times a week, I believe, the council meeting.
Out of curiosity, Mr. Giesler, how were you all determining, as Mr. Shepherd has said, it was planned to be 8 times in a week. How previously were you determining what meetings were played on what days? How was the schedule determined previously?
The schedule was determined basically just by doing it.
On what was thought to be the demand?
There really was not a plan. And that was also one of the reasons why we have been motivated to try to establish a more regular program schedule. This is also in response to citizen comments that we have gotten through some of the city aldermen. The city's chief of staff, Don Marr, has communicated to me. Several residents have made comments that they would appreciate a more regular schedule. But no, there has not been a specific plan. This is how we're going to program the station.
To be very clear, I think this is fantastic. I think this is huge strides, and your report shows all the stuff that you guys have done over the last year, which has made huge strides with you and your staff. I think this shows that you guys are on target with a lot of big things for 2011 as well. And I think this is huge. I know I personally, when I wanted to watch a city council meeting, would have to go into my TiVo and manually set it to record at Tuesday at 5 p.m. and then set it to end at midnight because I had no idea when the meeting was going to end. Yes. And with reruns and things like that, I think this is actually really fantastic and really huge. But as Mr. Shepherd had mentioned, something that might be taken into consideration is, since the city council meeting is so crucial and frequently makes news, it might be something to consider if there's a way to also fit that into Wednesday as well.
Well, and that's actually, that is why I wanted to share this with you, because I wanted to get feedback from you to see any possible issues that we possibly didn't see that you're identifying, so we can see if we can't implement those. The goal is going to be, however we may respond to some of this, is to maintain that goal of a consistent schedule. And one of the other reasons is that I've had several, I would say more than a couple of dozen requests or comments from people that there's nothing in the program guide. If you are a subscriber of anything more than just a basic cable service, you get a program guide that comes up on your screen, and the government channel doesn't have a program guide. It just says local government all the way through, whereas other channels you'll see, you can scroll forward or back and you can see what's going to be on. I'm hoping that once we are able to establish this kind of a regular program schedule, that we will be able to communicate that to the service providers, and then they can use that to establish that on-screen program guide so people can see that and utilize that as well.
It's fantastic.
You have a bit of a trade-off there, trying to find consistent programming with replaying the important meetings.
In conjunction with this, one of the things that we're working with our IT department on, and being very patient because they have a huge workload and they're shorthanded, but is to be able to have our automation controller actually update the program schedule that is on the internet on accessfayetteville.org, update it live. So if we make any changes to the program schedule, as you see, you have some of these things, blocks in here that just say informational programming. If we actually, when we actually schedule a program in that slot, so it might be the history of the Beaver Water District. We're running a program right now regarding the Beaver Water District. It's about 8.5 minutes long. When that is put in the schedule, we have the technology, we're just working on the connectivity for our broadcast system to actually update the schedule live, and then if you're looking at it on the internet, it be constantly updated live on the internet display of the program schedule. So we're working on that item as well, which I think, again, that's another one of those things we're trying to enhance for our viewers. As we do that, we're also going to try to implement the very same thing for the public access channel, so they have that capability as well.
It's certainly a trade-off. Any other questions?
That's all I have to share with you regarding the government channel operations and the City of Fayetteville Television Center operations. As you know, we had some pretty severe weather events, but we continue to telecast and through all that, and which was tremendous, and provide services for our residents, those that could get out and about. I would tell you that I do have some other information to share with you when we get to the part of the agenda regarding complaints and comments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reese.
And the next item, if we have no further comment there, is the Public Access Television Report from the Executive Director. I don't see anybody from your board tonight. Didn't join.
It's great to be with you all tonight. I apologize that I wasn't able to be in the office the day you had your orientation of the building, but I look forward to seeing you taking your classes. I'm going to be following you up with that.
Hold us to it.
All right, definitely will. Well, it's very exciting what's happening at Fayetteville Public Access Television, and also, in addition, your media. For those of you who don't know, we launched our new name on a public event on January 27th. You have your January report in front of you. I do want to apologize. I presented the annual report via email, but didn't think to represent it, so it'd be included in your packet. I'd be happy to do that if you all haven't seen it already, but I will give you some highlights tonight. One of my board members and longtime colleagues has always given me the great advice of start at the end. There's so much that I could express to you about all that we went through as an organization, being the public access provider in 2010. But what I'll start with at the end of our annual report are the numbers. I think that's what first and foremost shines through, especially since at the last telecom board meeting, I did present our annual review in which users were allowed to give feedback about how well we were doing our work. And a lot of that review segued into the annual report, so it would be a bit redundant to repeat some of that. But I will tell you that for 2010, we telecast at Public Access Television a total of 6,559 hours of programming. That's 928 hours first run and 5,632 hours of repeat programming throughout the year. That means we averaged 126.14 hours of programming per week, 17 first run hours, and 108 repeat programming each week. That we telecast 7,542 plays of programs. That's 1,144 first run and 6,398 repeat plays of programming. So you'll see that there is a lot of repeat plays that are happening on Fayetteville Public Access Television. It's my personal goal as we increase our number of offerings, our number of new producers, that you'll see a balance by the end of this next year in that we have, if not more new programs, that at least a good balance of repeat versus new programming that's coming into the public access station. And there were 1,320 different programs played on Fayetteville Public Access Television, 1,144 first run, and 1,167 repeat programs with some sort of overlap. The next information I want to provide to you, I think, is especially important when you juxtapose it to the goals that we have for this year, 2011. And that's the number of new producers that happened in 2010. As far as certified producers, which for those of you who are new to the game, certified producers are people who have completed the required number of classes, and in 2010 also produced at least one program that aired on Fayetteville Public Access Television. So that number for the year was 23. When you look at that compared to what we're being asked to do in this current contract year, 2011, in which we would have 50 candidate producers, which is a little bit different. Those are people who have completed all the classes and are actively working to make their new show. So in an entire year, we made less than a fourth of what we plan to do this year. And I see absolutely no reason that we won't reach or fulfill that goal, if not double it. That would be my personal goal, but don't hold me accountable to that. The number of new local producers in 2010 was 9. A local producer, for those of you who are new to this, are folks who make their own shows not using Fayetteville Public Access or Television Center equipment and bring it in and air it on the public access station. So we fell one short of our contractual goal of 10 with 9. But again, we're already seeing an increase in that, and I see as we publicize the work that we do and get more people energized and activated with public access television, that number will increase as well. And the number of new program requesters was 10. So I would say, if you look at it as a whole, while we certainly met some of our goals of our contract and got close to that very close to the local producer goal, that those goals will be exceeded this year. And really, I think those goals were set based on the standard of operations that were sort of standard practice over the last 2 years, and those are being completely reworked. The number of new and repeat programs by certified producers was 493. The number of new and repeat programs by local producers was 131. The new and repeat import programs was 535. Import programs are programs that are not created or made by the person who asked that they be played on the public access station. Oftentimes there'll be religious programs or programs, Democracy Now!, for instance, is one of them. Promotional programs 10 and fundraising programs 1. I think the backstory to those numbers, though, that it would be silly for me to stand up here and not to acknowledge, is the huge internal challenges that our organization faced in 2010, and yet we were able to overcome those and stand here before you with the report for January 2011, of which I'm very proud, with a newfound excellent relationship built with the city and the staff of Fayetteville Public Access Television Provider, which is now Your Media, and an organization that is growing beyond just being that service provider. So I'd like to read you the conclusion from my annual report, which I think sums that up. Community Access Television has navigated one of its most difficult junctures and come out to begin 2011 poised to meet the challenges of a new era of quality services for the residents of Fayetteville. I think if I could interject here, I think one of the major paradigm shifts that I'm seeing in the work that we do is going from a sort of us against them between the provider and the city to a strong partnership, and one in which we see not only that the clients we serve are the citizens and the residents of Fayetteville, but also our number one client is the city of Fayetteville, because you are, or the city is, backing this incredible opportunity, this incredible gift to the community. And as the providers, it is our job to do the best we can to serve that client. And everyone wins, in my opinion, when we do a good job of that. Back to the previously written thing. Throughout the difficulties, the above numbers show that the service provider never faltered, and new leadership has emerged in 2010 with a renewed sense of direction, vitality, and positive partnership with the city of Fayetteville. The measure of any organization has never been its difficulties, but rather its sustainability and its ability to learn from those challenges and emerge stronger and more capable of making its mission a reality for those it serves. And that's where I see us today. CAT has done just that. With 18 years of public access stewardship under its belt and its eyes steadily focused on a healthy future, Community Access Television, now Your Media, closes the chapter on 2010 and begins a new book of excellent public access television for the city of Fayetteville. Any questions about our annual report before I move on to January?
I don't want to draw things out too long, but just real quickly, I do realize in touring the facility that there's quite a few changes in making the transition from CAT to Your Media. You sound awfully confident about meeting the contractual agreement of increasing those numbers. Just real briefly, how do you plan on doing that? How do we plan on going from the numbers being at a quarter or a third to even exceeding or doubling those?
Well, we are following an incredible plan that was, I think, outlined in the contract with the city. and that is we are increasing the number of class offerings. I think I reported last time we are going from about 12 hours of classes per month in 2010 to some 60 hours of classes in a month in 2011 once we're fully functional up to our teaching capacity. We have added a director of education. We are working really hard to do a great new website, to do incredible outreach so that the public is very aware of these services. And I see no problem, and I have the confidence and backing of my director of education in meeting the goals and as outlined in the contract.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, we're really excited about it.
In the quick tour that I took, it does look very exciting.
It is. I hope that I really want to see you all down there. Any other questions about the annual report? No? All right.
If I may interrupt for just a moment, I would like to tell a little story that I think illustrates the new environment of partnership and commitment for both of our organizations, the city, your media as a contractor, to work together to move things forward for the benefit of our residents. And that is something that I think is something that everyone in this city is proud of. When the contract for 2011 for outsourced public access services was set to go before the city council in December of 2010, one of the stipulations in that contract was that only residents of Fayetteville, based on certain identification, basically the services are limited to residents of Fayetteville, which was a big change from what happened in the past. Well, there was a lot of people that have been active as producers, active as participants in the activities of public access television. And there was questions that were asked. Can we make a change in this? What can we do about this? And through guidance, through city, not just city staff, but also people from your media and their staff, a resident, and knowing how he feels about things, I'm not going to identify him by name, but he went to a city council member. He went to Alderman Petty and said, can we make a change in this? It was on the consent agenda. Can we make a change in this? And Alderman Petty said, I think you're right, we should make a change in it. Alderman Petty brought it forward in that city council meeting. It was presented, and that change was made, which allowed people that had been active producers, active involved in the activities of the public access channel to continue, even if they are not residents of Fayetteville. And I believe that right there, that amendment was made to the contract in the city council meeting by members of the city council, encouraged and contacted by producers of public access television, who were encouraged and to do so by staff of the public access, of your media, the public access operator, and city staff. And I think that illustrates that very well, that let's work together to make it work for everyone. And we're really proud to be able to tell that story of how the system works better now that where we are. Thank you.
It was a very exciting story. One of those moments at Public Access Television, the television channel, where this gentleman came in and suddenly got high fives and was really rewarded for taking that kind of action, and it really needed to come from a citizen. It was citizen driven, just like Public Access Television should be, and that change happened was really exciting. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I think some 24 to 27, if I remember right, non-Fayetteville residents were grandfathered in as certified producers because of his actions. So I thought that was an excellent team effort. All right, moving on to January. We've got some highlights that were based on our public access provider work, and also some highlights about our organization as a whole. I won't read this to you word for word, but I can say that most of January was a really strong and concerted effort by both Mr. Giesler, especially as the manager of the government channel and the Fayetteville Television Center, and our staff to really dive in headfirst into this contract and make it walk the talk of the contract, make it work for us operationally, see what changes need to be made so that we really are the best public access provider that we can be, and fulfilling not only the contract, but meeting the needs of the Fayetteville residents who will walk into that building. One of the things that I want to brag about is we sat down as a staff, my staff, and Fritz, and had a very long meeting early on in the month where page by page, word by word, we had an opportunity to go through the contract. And as the organization that was responsible for fulfilling the contract and the representative whose contract it was, talk about what each of those steps would mean, see how we can make that real and what we needed to do, what kinds of follow-up meetings needed to happen. And my staff reported to me afterwards, some of them have been there 5 years, that in their entire tenure that had never happened. That a meeting like that amongst both staff and the city that really mapped out how this contract could work for both of us had never happened before. And that really kicked off the communication and the kind of work that we're doing together to make this a successful year. We followed that with weekly meetings, meetings between Fritz and whoever staff members are responsible for certain items that need to be done in the contract. And we're working, moving forward, launching the classes, making sure that we had them tweaked, making sure the curriculums were all what our client, the city, really wanted them to be. So, been very excited about all of that. It's been a big year of transition, or a big month of transition, and I think doing a great job of accomplishing the goals we set out in that first month. One of the things that I added to the report, especially since this year we'll be doing only Fayetteville residents, that I thought would be helpful to all of us, is the number of class participants and program requesters by ward. So I do want to highlight that, which is on page 2 of my report. So for the class participants, and again, these are classes that were newly launched. We've done very little outreach so far. We just received the exciting new, if you haven't had a chance to see it, you will soon, the new public access television logo. So we're actively working on launching the website, which should be launched within the next couple of weeks. So all of these numbers are done without very little outreach efforts so far. Ward 1, we've had no class participants so far. Ward 2, there were 4. Ward 3, there was 1. And Ward 4, there was 7. Are you Ward 4, Aubrey? Mm-mm. What ward are you? You're 4?
That'd be me.
All right, see? You could really boost those numbers, just you two.
Did I request a program?
All right, well, there you go.
Did I? No, I don't.
The number of program requesters by ward, Ward 1, 3, Ward 2, 8, Ward 3, 4, and Ward 4, 7. I was very pleased with that. It is a pretty, even distribution. And this will help us as we move forward, not only in tracking for the city council and the city who's investing in our work, how this work is spread out over the city, but also where our outreach efforts may need to be placed in the future, so that we're really bringing a good cross-section of the city into our facility. As far as organizational highlights, as you know, we changed our name. It's not legal yet. That process takes a few months. But we are now officially doing business as Your Media, and we'll be opening our own office in which we will provide non-public access television services for all of Northwest Arkansas. Our open house is actually next Thursday at 5. We're at 200 West Center, which is actually at Center and Church, and you'll enter on the church side of that building. Out of that building, we'll be doing services for non-Fayetteville residents, but we'll also be doing a lot of affordable contract productions for organizations and nonprofits that may not be able to have Fayetteville residents or volunteers that can take the classes and produce their own video productions. We want to really supplement and expand the work of the public access television as the public access television provider. We see it as a real great chance to grow the work that's already happening there and reach folks in different ways.
Well, excuse me, let me ask you a question related to this topic in general. I know I didn't find out about that aspect of it until the actual meeting night, the opening night over there. Mm-hmm. But I was wondering, did that come from your board? Since we don't see the government channel no longer covers CAT board meetings live as they did 2 years ago, and or up until October of 2009, they were live in this room as this meeting is on a different night. But with the cutback in the economy, apparently that would have cost a few bucks to continue that. So CAT's been covering its own meetings,
Correct?
and I was wondering, it just has resulted in the last couple of months I have not seen one of them broadcast. I haven't happened to catch it. Was this a board public interaction, or is this something separate from
The opening the second office?
What we call the CAT board?
Sure, I'd love to explain that process.
A little more about it.
Yeah, from my perspective, when I came on staff in August of 2009, full-time in August, the organization, then CAT, was already in the process of a strategic planning process. It already held a couple of meetings, so I got to be in on the second half of that. I will say, and during that process, for the 5-year plan of 5-year goals, it was very strongly and unanimously articulated that we wanted to be not only a great public access television provider, but we wanted to reach beyond that facility and be able to be renowned in Northwest Arkansas as a great media organization where people could come and get our services. So that was sort of a 5-year goal that had already been set in place by the board and staff prior to my coming on board. I was part of that process. My background is in nonprofits and organizations, and have had a fairly good success in building strong nonprofit organizations. My personal assessment in coming on is that as a nonprofit, things were kind of done backwards in the sense, no offense to anyone who preceded me, but that this organization began as a nonprofit solely to be the public access service provider, and hence never had its own individual identity, nor did it have with that a real strong effort to create and sustain a strong nonprofit in the ways that nonprofits traditionally function in a healthy environment for a nonprofit. So in my opinion, it was sort of the perfect storm. Add to that the RFP came out for the next 5 years, and at that same time, the city was really pushing to better define public access television as how I started off my report to you tonight, that they really are the client, and this is a service that we are paid to provide for them that benefits the Fayetteville residents.
Well, yes.
Yeah. Right.
Let's think about that a minute. When you say the city, sometimes people were talking about the city administration. Sometimes they include the city council. But when I talk about the city, I talk about every resident of the city.
Okay. Okay.
So when
I want to be
we're
clear.
benefiting the city, it's
From
the
the hat of
people.
being an executive director of a healthy nonprofit, whether it's through a fundraising grant, or we have a major donor, or we have a contract with the client, this is how we earn our money, and this is the work that we do. So as a healthy organization, we need to best service our number one contractor, where we're getting the bulk of our money. Now, if we are also to grow beyond that, as the strategic plan outlined, and that was the intention of everyone when I came on board of this organization, as well as making sure that it became a healthy nonprofit, you match that with the new defined needs of the city and the new contract, and it seemed like the perfect storm for us to not only do a great job in providing the services as the outsourced provider of public access television, but for us to go ahead and take that leap so that we were reaching our strategic plan, our vision for a healthy organization that could also serve the city and Northwest Arkansas with affordable and accessible media. So that's how it all happened. It was already, the foundation was laid, and these things happened that made it clear to me that this was the right time to do this. And in doing that, we better define ourselves, we can build a more sustainable organization and be a better access provider for the city, being the people with whom we have signed the contract.
I guess another question people may wonder, how does the nonprofit office provide services to others? Are these all media services? And will they all come through the CAT or former CAT?
Yeah, that's okay. It'll take a while. Your
from
media?
the same studio, the same
No,
volunteer
that's
productions?
a great question. Anything that is housed within the Fayetteville Television Center is the property of the city for use in public access services to residents of Fayetteville. So for us to do production work that makes us income, for example, we need to have as a nonprofit, our own equipment, our own location where people are utilizing the equipment and services that may not be just to produce shows for the public access television station. So it really is a separation of. One of the things in the new contract, we were certainly allowed to continue to do contract production should we want to, using the City of Fayetteville equipment, and understandably so, if we did that, for fairness to other people in Fayetteville, we would need to offer those services at a fair market value, which as a nonprofit, trying to make media affordable to other nonprofits and organizations who may not be able to afford those rates, we can't do that using city equipment. So another reason why we need to have our own resources, equipment, and presence so that we can serve that part of what I think is an important part of our mission, to make video production affordable and accessible to nonprofits and organizations. Does that make sense? So it's really defining two different aspects of the work that we want to do.
Anyone else want to comment at that point? Well, if not, I will say that it's very ambitious to add any mission when you've got much greater requirements for producers trained and all these things that were debated in past years by the Telecommunication Board up until this year when we did not participate in the contract process. We were constantly discussing each year what numbers should be required, knowing the limits of 4 people on staff and excuse me, all the financial limits. So it's certainly ambitious, and as a professional fundraiser, you have the ideas and the expertise to make this happen.
That's my hope.
But I think no one,
Well, I would just.
no one of us would take on that.
I would
that
just
extra.
challenge one thing you said, Aubrey, and that is to add a new mission. We're not adding a new mission. As part of that strategic planning process, before the RFP was even released, the board voted in a new mission for 2011, which was that then CABA, your media, provides the way for you to freely express yourself through media. So what we do as the public access service provider fulfills that mission. What we will do as our own organization, independent of that, in our offices on Church Street, will also fulfill the mission. So the mission is the same. It's just how we are living that mission out and providing those services that is definitely changing. And certainly the way we look at ourselves as a nonprofit and why we are in existence. And I don't think this is any new idea. In fact, our accountant, when I was talking to her, and she's probably had the hardest job in all this transition because we now have 3 different, with the trust account that's part of the contract, we have 3 different accountings that we have to do now each month versus just the one. But she said to me, you know what, I've heard for over a decade now, because she's worked with the organization so long, of wanting to move beyond just being public access provider, but this is the first time I've seen it happening. So it's not a new idea. It's an idea whose time has come, and I'm committed to seeing it through.
While it may sound ambitious, I think it's a way to get outside that box of the current facility when you talk about a nonprofit organization that wants to have their meetings or have their club meetings and things like that televised, such as a Lions Club or something of that caliber, where they don't have the resources to get everyone certified in the facility. This would allow your nonprofit, if I'm correct here, to assist them with that, where
Absolutely.
they can help prepare the media, which
Right.
I think is really a huge stride as well, because that's going to increase our programming. It's going to create the diversity, and
Right.
it's going to
Exactly.
really mix things up,
Right.
which I think will help breathe new life into the channel.
Well, and the upside of that too is, I mean, it's all going to be a win-win. If the programming that we're helping to produce through your media outside of public access television, because I'm a resident of Fayetteville, will of course be submitted to public access television as a program request. So we are increasing. I mean, our relationship is like this. We will increase the amount of diverse programming, and that goes beyond just what's happening by the producers that use the television facility. So it's exciting, the opportunities. And yes, it is a challenge, but I think we're pretty set to make it happen. I feel good about it.
I think that's great. I think that if we can get people out to the open house on Thursday, that would really kind of help get things ignited. That looks really cool. Looks like you got some good stuff coming this year.
Yeah, we'll be launching a couple of new ideas at that open house. So,
If I may say, in regard to that, I would like to reinforce that even through the process and looking at the process of the RFP last year, the city administration, the RFP committee, which comprised 5 people, including Mr. Russell from this board, voted to award the contract for outsourced public access television services to community access television, and that was a vote of confidence. The contract negotiations as they went forward and as we worked together as to get to a win-win on that was a vote of confidence, and the city is very confident. The city administration, I'm trying to be clear with that, Mr. Shepard. The city administration is very confident and very excited to be working with your media and Ms. Shelley and the entire board as they move forward with their endeavors, but we have every confidence that the goals and the performance criteria in the contract for 2011, that they will have no difficulty whatsoever in meeting those.
Great.
Okay, another thing, if I may ask
Yes,
you
please.
before I forget. Is it true now, are you anything going to be broadcast live on the station anymore?
sure,
Public access station?
if a local or a candidate or certified producer wants to do a live show, absolutely. They just have to request doing so, and we'll schedule it, and it would happen. Mm-hmm.
Okay, how about the board meetings? Are they going to be broadcast?
Now that's no, the board meetings will no longer be live. One of my understanding of why that happened was that as part of our contract, we are to uphold FOIA standards, which we are very committed to doing. And I think because also of some of the issues that happened over the past year with board meetings, and again, this is just my anecdotal understanding, that it felt very important that those be broadcast live to meet those requirements for FOIA. We will be taping all of them and broadcasting them on public access television, but there is not an FOIA requirement that board meetings be broadcast live. So we will be still fulfilling that requirement, but we will not be broadcasting them live.
Okay, well, some would maintain, I believe, that even if defined as not being totally under FOIA requirements here,
Mm-hmm.
if you raise the funding enough that you raise yourself, then the argument might be true. But right now, it's primarily still financed by the government funding, taxpayers. Actually, it's theoretically the money comes for this. The ability to have the public stations comes from the cable companies years ago being required to provide this. And the city collects now as well fees as well from not only cable subscribers, but also from the AT&T that utilizes the right in our city to share these stations. And even though I don't think there's any federal requirement that they do so, but they have to compete. As long as some of us want to see our stations, we'll be going to the place to get them. But anyway, the question of Cat Board being live, as I said, it used to be in this room
Sure.
live on a set date,
Right.
and it was.
I guess I would
treated
counter,
as
again,
important.
I was the outreach coordinator in 1998 for community access television for 6 months, but after that had not very much involvement with it at all. So I'm looking at it as the requirements of the contract that I have signed on behalf of my organization. And I understand that as there are probably 2, and you can correct me if I'm wrong as the city administration representative, 2 to 3 other outsourced providers that the city contracts with to provide services for the city in the city's name, the wastewater being the main one. And I don't see any of those other outsourced providers being asked to televise live board meetings. I mean, we're an organization that will live up to FOIA, but as per my understanding of the contract, there's not a necessity for us to telecast our board meetings live.
Well, it may be.
Am I correct?
I understand. Well, I don't know
Okay.
what.
And again, I don't know what happened in the
Over
past.
the years, we
Yeah,
pushed to get things like A&P Commission. They
Right.
were not being broadcast at one time.
Right.
And we got that on Government Channel.
and if I could take this opportunity to do a pitch we would love to help any group or organization who can't get their meetings telecast to provide affordable media services to film those and make sure that they are telecast on public access
So you
television.
have a projection of when you'll have equipment to do some
Well,
of that outside of?
we were talking at staff. We have the editing equipment. We have a lot of the administrative equipment secured. We're still looking into the camera equipment. As we were talking about at staff meeting yesterday, with the inclement weather and the loss of days, we are about a month behind now on our goal. So now we're looking at the end of the first quarter versus what we had originally anticipated by the end of February. We would, for our open house, have those cameras and be able to ooh and ah the public with them. But we're now changing that to by the end of the first quarter, we will be able to provide those services.
Is there any chance that CAT would be able to schedule? The consistency is not the problem, but can they get their meetings, their schedule out more than a little faster, or not that? I think they do. They get it out by Friday or something, maybe. Right
The board meetings?
Send out, no,
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
schedule of what's going to show.
Oh, the
following
programming
week.
schedule? Yeah.
But the problem is they're having to have all of it decided more than a week ahead of time, so that if even I think your media showing itself has not been edited and prepared, but sometimes people will have things edited and ready, but they can't get them on the following week. So it makes it impossible. Say a person wants to use CAT to broadcast his opinion, his ideas on an issue that's coming before the city council. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't know about the issue significance until, a week or two ahead. Mm-hmm. But if he could do it this week and have it run next Monday mm-hmm. before the next council meeting, then he would have the ability to actually do that. And with, homemade equipment, or now homemade equipment means an iPhone or something that'll give you 1080p
Right. Yeah.
quality up close, and you can
Right.
put it right on there.
It's stipulated in the contract that any programming that is submitted will be telecast within 7 days.
Yeah.
Within 7
Yeah,
days.
it has to be put, if a person brings in a program or submits a finished program for telecast, it has to be put on the program schedule no later than 7 days from that date. So if somebody brought something in on Thursday, it has to be put on the schedule no later than the next Thursday. So there's a minimum, maximum of a 7-day delay. They strive to do it more quickly than that. I watch the process daily as their staff member who's responsible for doing that, but it's stipulated in the contract a maximum of 7 days.
And I think it would be a great opportunity for your person you described to use the short takes as you do, as a
But
way to
again,
also. Again,
they're
it
not
airs the
live
next
right
week.
now.
That's right.
They've
They air
been
the
live
next
for
week.
years, and I learned just, last month,
Right.
whatever, first of the year, when did they stop being live?
At the first of the year,
Yeah.
in January.
So-
And that was an internal decision based on our operations and the number of users that actually use live. And it's certainly not a contractual requirement that they are live, so.
Well, the only time they weren't live in past years has been the night before the election on Tuesday.
Yeah.
We never got to express an opinion live, and I would have been able to follow that rule, but if we had been doing our live short takes, because I like to talk about a lot of other subjects and don't have to talk about the election, but it motivated me this past election period to make my comments on the election candidates I liked something on a short take, to do it a week ahead of time,
Right.
so that it did get run once,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But that the immediacy is the thing that I think these stations have the opportunity to do. Live broadcasting is so incredibly important that people get it, and there's no way reporters used to. There were reporters for every little meeting. They had several reporters covering city business, competing in different towns. And so it was hard to have a meeting that didn't get some play in the newspapers a few years ago. Now, in fact, they did publish the government channel and the CAT channel schedules for quite a few years, until 2008, I think. Sometime they stopped. They just didn't have enough space. They were shrinking the newspaper, and it wasn't getting it typed up and ready. It was that they simply didn't dare print another page without ads on it. I mean, that was what it was. It's given a whole page to that, or half a page.
Well,
So-
I personally think that live programming is one of the greatest offerings that we have for our producers down there. We have a couple of different series that are aired live every week, and would love to see more producers from Ward 4. Just kidding. So with you guys,
wherever.
producing live shows. I think
two of
that's that's one of the really exciting things that we do have at the Television Center, is an incredible studio, and Fritz has done a great job to get us really wonderful equipment. In fact, this would be a good time to plug a workshop we're having a week from Saturday that Fritz is going to be doing on audio, including an in-depth training on the new audio board system that's part of the control room in the studio. So yes, live shows are very welcome. I think they're some of the most exciting programming that we can offer. But we can do it. In my opinion, it's for the producers, the Fayetteville residents to do it. Certainly we can do it, but it's much more meeting our mission if the producers produce those live shows. So. Just a few, back to this really quickly. If you'll look at the numbers for participants in trainings, one of the things we are, and candidate producers, it's all at the bottom of page 4. We had 12 new trainees in 1 month, which I think exceeds probably any month in recent history, just for a month in which we were really just kind of building up the classes, certainly not doing much outreach on them, and then dealing with weather on top of that. We've already reached 2 new candidate producers, 3 certified producers. And one of the exciting things that I see is the number of new people coming to orientation. So those are folks who are showing up, really learning what we have to offer at public access television. And once they've completed orientation, they are good to go on any of the other classes that we offer. So we're certainly going to face some challenges with the loss of time due to the weather in February, but we still feel real on track to meet our numbers in the first quarter. Any other questions? I won't go through any more of the details, but I feel very positive about the changes that are happening.
Okay, let's ask if we have public comment. I see one person who may want to ask a question on this subject.
On this topic?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry?
Do you have a question or comment on the CAT?
A compliment, but I'll do that in the compliments and complaints.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Ann.
Okay, this leaves us with Telecom Board discussion of Cox Cable's announcements of changes in channel lineup affecting PEG channels, which are now, well, they're still going to be PEG channels for a while. What have you guys heard? I did hear some complaints a few weeks ago. I haven't talked to anybody who's got a complaint with their borrowed free box from Cox for 2 years. Anybody have a problem with that? The worst was a lady who tried to install her own. She kept calling, and she'd followed all the directions she said. So finally, she convinced them to send out a man to hook it up free, because It was going to be a service call if somebody came out to plug it in. And it sounds simple, but then came out, sure enough, it wouldn't work. It was installed right. And he got the third one, different one, he got out of his van and tried, finally got one that worked. So she told me that story, and I was glad I hadn't tried to hook mine up, because, and I still haven't. So I'm planning to do that, but it requires moving the TV in a tight spot and getting behind there and deciding whether you want to use the old-fashioned cables, or do you want to use your HDMI cable to your digital TV, and various choices like that. So I just haven't done it. I've tried to watch these stations online, and as I say, sometimes it fails. But when they work fine most of the time. But, and it depends on your bandwidth and so forth, I guess. And what else? Don't try to run something else, do something else on that same computer and overload your system inside your home. But if no one else has any comment on that, I will say that it's still a surprise, and I would ask, maybe Mr. Giesler knows, what is being shown at this point in the channel 16, 18 slots?
Nothing. They're
Nothing?
gone. Those
14.
channels are gone.
Oh,
You can't even tune them in.
okay, so they're just not there.
There's just nothing there.
Well, somebody had suggested that they thought they were putting in some more of those channels where you shop or something, but I thought, no, I didn't
No,
think
sir.
they were going to do that.
About a week or so ago, I tried tuning in all three of the 14, 16, and 18, and they were all, it won't even tune them in.
Right.
So they just don't exist anymore.
Don't exist.
Yeah.
Have you had calls from people who weren't able to get it and so forth? Have you had any problems from people that are mentioned?
If I recall, the last actual call we got from the city administration got regarding anything to do with the channel migration and the digital converter box or anything like that was handled satisfactorily for that individual. I also would like to express that while we weren't completely supportive of migrating the channels. As the process has gone forward, Cox Communications has been very responsive to any issues. There have been some issues. We've gotten some complaints. That ranged everywhere from, I went down to the Cox store to get my converter box and they had no idea what I was talking about, to I called the toll-free number to get some information and they told me that I was going to have to pay for it. Every single call that we have received, or email that we have received, or letter that we have received at the city administration regarding any issue of that type, we've immediately contacted the Public Affairs Office of Cox Communication, who immediately went forward and identified who the people were responsible, where and how they may have gotten their false information, corrected it, and took care of the person who was having the issue directly. And we have also, of most of the complaints that we originally got, we have gotten follow-up from those people saying, thank you, Cox took care of the situation admirably, and we're satisfied now.
And in the discussion and working with them to get the channel programming lineup stuff where it will show up on a digital box, I don't know if it's possible or not. If they don't have immediate plans for those channels, maybe it's possible to work with them where we are able to maybe even just say on those three channels has been moved to.
On 14, 16, and 18?
Yes.
We did that for 60 days. And at that time, understand that the reason that the access channels were migrated in the first place was to free up bandwidth on the system.
Sure.
And for an analog channel, one analog channel equals about 10 digital channels.
Well, just to be clear, not necessarily the channel itself, but on the guide menu maybe. If we're working with them to see if we can get the information.
I don't
on them
believe
from
those
the-
channels even show up on the guide.
Okay.
I'll double check that though,
Gotcha.
to
That
make
was
sure.
my suggestion is on the guide itself, if there's something, if they are there, they say where they moved to.
If they have that capability, if they're there and they have that capability, I'll follow up with them and see if we can't do that.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, they do print a guide which you can get, but I guess you have to always go get it. I don't think they mail them out to people, is that right?
The channel,
The one that Cox prints on their
the
copy.
channel lineup, they will send one of those every time they make a channel change to subscribers. I know I received one when this channel change happened. I received a new printed guide.
Right. But I think they maybe actually create one per month. I'm not
As far as I
certain
know,
of that.
they only print a new one anytime they change the channel lineup itself, because it's a very expensive proposition to
Right.
print those new ones.
But I didn't know if they did come by mail. I never received one by mail, so. All right. Education channel report. Didn't get anybody, didn't get a hold of anybody.
Right
So
now, we are-
We're hoping to hear, what have you heard?
We're still in the process of working on a draft agreement with Fayetteville Public Schools. Fayetteville Public Schools, in the interim, has taken over the education channel. They are telecasting programming 24/7 on the education channel, which is channel 217 on Cox Communications, still in channel 99 menu on AT&T. So that's still in process to finalize the agreement. Again, it's going to be an agreement that just essentially says, they're going to do it. City administration is going to let them do it. And you as a board will have a copy of the proposed agreement well in advance of it being considered by the city council or the school board. So you'll have an opportunity to review it and provide whatever input you would like to provide to the city council when they consider it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I would like to invite new members. I'm going to have one. So, to join the Internet Subcommittee. Who else here has participated in the Internet Subcommittee?
I am.
You did once or twice or three times.
Yeah, Mr. Tennant, I believe, was the chairman of that
yes.
subcommittee, and Mr. Marvin Hilton was a part of that as well.
And they're
And
not
both
with us
are
now, so.
no longer with us, so.
We've got, look, 1, 2, 3, that makes a committee. Anybody willing to volunteer?
I'd definitely like to continue on that,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
I've actually got another issue I'm going to be looking into on franchise fees. So I would defer to somebody else on the internet subcommittee for now.
Okay.
When are we currently meeting with the
Well,
Internet Subcommittee?
it has not met since September or
September,
sometime.
October, yeah.
And we would want preferably 3 people get together and choose one of you to be the chairman and actually go forward with that. If you use the internet and you're interested in the internet, that helps. If you're an expert on it, that's even better, but you don't have to be, so.
I bet you could sign Mr. Spencer up for that.
Okay, you know Mr. Spencer.
I do.
Well.
He's an IT person with the Red
good.
Cross.
Maybe we'll nominate him.
Maybe
I'm
we
gonna-
should let him know.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and nominate him for that.
All in favor, do I have a second? Okay. All right, well, at least if you and you will get Mr. Spencer on board.
I think we can do that.
Sure.
Then maybe next month we'll have that committee functioning again. Thank you. Now we're ready for the compliments, complaints.
Oh, I believe we were going to discuss the
Oh, the-
meeting
Oh,
location.
meeting location, yes. Okay,
Okay, so the city council and the planning commission are the other 2 bodies that meet in this room.
yes. And I don't know how many years that's gone on, probably more than a decade or whenever, the things change. I don't recall way back there, but
Okay.
Yeah, that's normal.
I just think with 7 people sitting in a big old room like this, it doesn't really foster good discussion with the public. I mean, we can sit here and talk to each other, but when you got to get Mr. Giesler and Ms. Shelley and Mr. Bemis to stand up at a podium and address us so formally, I don't think that's dealing with the public like we ought to be.
Well, if you watch a lot of these meetings, you notice that we do now have a camera up here. In the past, you'd have a camera on the side try to get the face of the person speaking up there.
If I understand correctly,
Right.
you're talking about having something maybe, for lack of a better term, more intimate, something that's more conversational.
Absolutely.
Rather than, so.
Because almost all of the other boards and commissions meet in room 326. It's a smaller space. It's better for discussions with anybody that actually comes into the meeting.
But once again, we still don't have cameras that can pick up the speaker in those other rooms. And
Have there been any issues with that as far as complaints from the public to the government channel on televised meetings with the boards that meet in that room?
No, sir. I would tell you that based on what you're saying, that's well, I've been told that is the primary reason that the city council holds its agenda sessions in room 326, because they felt that it engendered more discussion because of the format of the room and the tables being in a rectangular pattern, that they felt that it actually did engender more conversational give and take regarding the agenda items amongst the participants, and therefore that's why they have their agenda sessions in that room. However, the legislative session is in this room because of the
It's
more
a much
formal,
more
aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Does it create any kind of issue from the broadcast side to televise the meetings from that room? I would assume, being the agenda session's done in there, that there's no problems with broadcasting from that room.
Now, we record several meetings, as Mr. Pennington said. A lot of boards and commissions meet in 326. The other meeting room that is available to schedule for that is room 111, which is on the first floor. And it also has, its tables are in a rectangular format like 326. And we have not received any complaints from anybody regarding how we record those meetings in there, which we do with one camera in one end of the room, and we try to do that as effectively as possible.
but there is this complaint that you don't hear all of, but oftentimes you cannot hear the speaker whose back of the head is being shown while he's presenting to the whatever panel's there.
Correct if I'm wrong, Blake, but I think what you're suggesting is that when we have the speakers, that they would be seated as well in the room, or are you suggesting they would be presenting?
I think that'd be fine if we could have them seated at the table with us.
I think that would be all right as well, but
I don't know how we would configure that. It's a logistics issue if we looked at the room.
I would say that matter of having that speaker space equal to everybody else's, so that when that person's up there speaking, a person that represents the public or a staff member making a presentation of whatever it is, that we've now got this wonderful backup camera here. And that makes, in making television, as we say, we want to hear every word clearly. We don't want anybody speaking a way that we can't hear. There have been a lot of things run on government channel with the audio just, sometimes we don't even have the face. The camera person sometimes does not go over there and get that person speaking face, even if they're in a position they can see their face. And it takes a little time to do it. This is a great system. This is a wonderful thing that you can snap right to it, and it's all done from
your
there.
suggestion is to make the meeting more conversational, might make it a little bit more warm rather than a more formal environment. The speakers or members of the public would join us at sitting at these tables.
That would be the goal.
And board members would be denoted by their name plaque or whatnot, and that would show the separation, if you will.
Just from a psychological standpoint, I'd like to sit down at a table with somebody. And I mean, if Mr. Bemis has some complaints he wants to bring to us, I want to look him in the eye and not from 30 feet away, and so we could talk about it.
Sure,
I mean-
I do understand that.
Is there a conflict with those rooms at the times that we meet?
At this point in time, the meeting rooms in the City Hall are scheduled through City Clerk Saunders Smith. So if the board decided that, that you wanted to meet at, in a different room, you would have to contact, or I would contact the city clerk and find out what room is available at what times. Is one of those rooms available on the third Thursday at 5:30? I don't know. That's not something that I'm aware of because I wasn't paying it. I don't pay attention to the actual room schedule. I do pay attention to when this meeting is, but
Right.
so I can't answer that question. I can tell you that whatever the board may decide, we will consult with you on how to actually configure and conduct the meeting so it is the most effective possible, both from the live meeting perspective of what happens in the room and also from the viewer's perspective of what they will see and hear on the government channel.
Could we give it a trial run?
Well, we've had committee meetings in there, and you can watch some of those.
I know.
In fact, that's one
What are your
on
thoughts?
that video.
I mean, I've seen, like Aubrey was saying, I've seen a lot of committee meetings, and from a viewer's perspective on television, it doesn't seem as viewer friendly. In 326 anyway. I don't recall any in 111, but I know in 326 it seems like you're more or less a fly on the wall, where this is more interactive.
If it would give you, if it would help you make your decision at
But
all.
I do see your point too in being more open and or more friendly within the chamber.
Yeah, there have been times in this room when to have a ward meeting, actually the council members from that ward just pull chairs right down here close and
Yeah.
and interacted that way. But that's before we had this camera
One of the things
in the
that
back and these automated ones here.
like I said, if this would help you consider this situation, let's just take room 326, for example. We've all seen an agenda session that occurs in there. Traditionally, we know where the mayor sits. He sits at that one end of that square table. City council members in their respective places, city attorney, city clerk, where they are. What does that leave? That leaves the one place where the person who's presenting to this group has their back to the camera. Well, there's 7 members of the telecommunications board. You have 1 staff member that is your support, that's me. So we're looking at fewer people. My suggestion would be that we put the chair on that end of that table where the mayor sits. And we also, at that point in time, we have anybody who's going to be making a presentation to the board and subsequently the viewers to be at that same end. So they're facing the camera and they have a microphone available to them to speak.
That's
and they
kind of
go
the
in and
way-
out. I'm sorry?
That's what I would understood it would be from what you've suggested, Mr. Pennington. That's what I had envisioned, rather.
And that's how I would conduct the meeting, and rather than having that individual who would be presenting me, Ms. Shelley, Mr. Bemis, whomever who may be going in there, sitting with their back to the camera, I would say, let's turn that around. Still have the chair at that end facing the camera, the members of the board and other participants on the sides, and anybody who's doing a presentation to go to the same end where the chair is and be able to present to the board and the camera that's there as well.
Well, after you came on board to work here in the, spring '09? I don't remember what.
April of '09, it's been
April
almost 2
'09.
years now.
Well, first meeting, I immediately suggested you do what we had done in past years before I ever got on the board, which was 2.5 years ago, nearly. Mr. Hilton, when he was station manager and administrator for the government channel, sat over here, and the communication director sat over here on this side. So they were all on the table, on this table, and with mics, and didn't have to get up to speak. Public had to come and speak. And if the city attorney came to advise us on something, he sat up there in his usual seat. When anybody's at meeting in here, council or planning commission or anybody, there's somebody there. But we haven't had all that staff support. In fact, we had a gap before you were hired that year, you know, '09. So, and then Mrs. Smith came on in what? August that year. So, and she's attended often, although not, well, we haven't had many meetings lately, so I don't know. We can't
Whatever
tell
the
who was
board
absent.
decides, we will make it work for you. That's what we're here to do.
So I'd
So,
kind of like to give it a try.
We want to propose a trial.
Well, we could have a committee meeting so you can have the experience.
I'd move that we have next month's meeting in room 326 if it's available through the city clerk's office. And to have it configured in the way that Mr. Geisler had said.
I'll second that. I think that would create a maybe a little better environment.
Okay, I will discuss this a little further, and others may also, before I ask for, call that for a vote with only 4 people. Once again, we haven't had a 5-person vote in 6 months or something. The clerk's office has a schedule, and in most Thursday nights, in fact, Council of Neighborhoods was meeting upstairs on the 3rd Thursday and actually moved it to get away from our meeting night and some others that were trying to get in on Thursdays. So the Partners Board has been meeting on Thursdays, and the some Thursdays, there's just a whole raft of them. You have to go through the schedule, but the schedule's
Can't we
Up for
check the
total
schedule out
change.
and next month make that decision? Or, I mean, there's a motion
Yeah,
that's
I think
seconded
it's-
already, but
rash to say we would ask her to swap somebody else's meeting out.
This is-
Oh,
check it out.
I think you're saying just assuming that
Only
there's
if
no,
it's
only if it's
available.
available.
right.
Yeah, if 326 is available, I think we ought to give it a try. If we can work with the city clerk on that.
Okay, well, I'll take a vote, and I'll talk to the city clerk about it and see what the situation is, if you so move or so vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I don't have to vote. Anyway, I will address the city clerk with this subject immediately. That is something we decide on, some of those things, but we can't arbitrarily pick a day and tell her what we want.
Sure.
We can ask for a day to have a day and time to have a committee meeting. That's how we do that. So it's all ask the city clerk for.
Sure.
For our, just our regular
Yeah.
set meeting time.
Okay, now we get to compliments, complaints, and coverage area residents' comments.
I have actually several to address.
I'm sorry, I don't make the complaint. Don't I get to make the complaint then?
Well, I have several other complaints to address.
Well, am I the only, you're the.
No, you're not the only complaint.
All right, look, I've waited 2 hours and you've talked an hour and a half. Please,
Mr. Bemis,
Take long.
Go ahead.
Mr. Bemis, please come to the podium and address us.
That gets to the root of my problem. I don't blame Fritz for wanting to come up here and speak about his complaints, but I wanted to make a compliment. And one of the compliments is for Miss Shelley and her new job, and another compliment is for Fritz and the program they recently had at the Cosmopolitan, honoring, among other people, Marion Orton, who has done a tremendous job for this city in regards to the telecommunications stuff. If Fritz wants to go ahead now with the complaints, fine. I wanted to make that compliment first. Thank
I
you.
would,
Well, Mr.
I would defer to
Bemis-
Mr. Shepherd as the
Pardon?
chair as to which thank you, Mr. Bemis.
Okay.
I would have
That's very
referred
kind
to
of you, Mr.
Chairman as-
Geisler.
Mr. Chairman as to-
Mr. Bemis, I
I'm gonna
think
go
you
forward.
should present what you would like for whatever little time. I know he's prepared some summaries or something, and I don't know how that fits.
I have a
with
problem with what I've read tonight. This is the first I've seen of it, and I think that's the first you all have seen of his reply to my note. And actually, my complaint began last September not in February 14th. It evidently got lost in the shuffle, but I've sent you all multiple copies of the complaints with reminders over the last 4 or 5 months. They have not been considered. So I would prefer to come back to you. I would prefer to come to you at a policy subcommittee meeting because that's what we're talking about. And I'm going to run through real quickly and tell you the kinds of things that I see in this document that I referred to in my note to you yesterday and today, which agreed this would be a good starting point. But what we have here is the city framing my complaint. And I have already sent you a complaint over the last 3 or 4 months, which was not considered. So I prefer to start with my complaint and let the city respond to it. Do you understand what I mean? I'm making myself clear.
That certainly makes sense.
Okay. In other words, this is my complaint, and we're starting with a response from the city. I want to start with my complaint and then see a response from you all and the city, which I think is the way the complaint process is supposed to be set up.
That makes sense.
Okay. To go through here briefly, though, I'm talking 5 minutes, y'all. I know it's late. We have a fundamental disconnect between the city council, which really is the decider about all of these issues. There is no connecting device on a monthly or even a yearly basis between the council and this board. This has always been a flawed process because they don't get to see things until there's a problem. There's no evaluation of the performance of the federal government channel by the council, I'm talking about, with your input. They've recently had a very rigorous evaluation for the CAT, for your media, and we very seldom even see the folks on the educational channel, and they're having a contract being written by the city, not by you folks, and you will get input later on. I see that as a sea change in the way we've operated here in the city. And these are nuances, and again, they should be discussed at the policy subcommittee level before you all discuss them. We're going to talk some legal issues, technological issues, etc. For example, in this document, we talk about the channels, the 3 channels, and we talk about television. But we do not talk about telecommunications, which is your job. In 2003, when then Alderman Marr and Jordan led a very successful task force, with actually an ad hoc subcommittee of the council, we went over all of these same kinds of issues. And the first decision they made was to have a telecommunications board. But obviously, we did not do a very good job of clarifying what the board real duties and responsibilities were, as opposed to the cities and as opposed to the councils. There's 3 in the mix. Now, you folks have a very difficult job meeting once a month to do this. Actually, if you were being evaluated in a company, your attendance, or in a schoolroom where I had been, you would be evaluated on your attendance, just like your kids are. You'd be evaluated on what a set level of criteria of what you're supposed to be doing. As we have it now, and this is not y'all's problem, over the last 10 years, we've never had a budget for telecommunications as it's defined in the ordinance. We've never had an organizational chart of all of the telecommunications components. You're talking about an internet policy subcommittee tonight. That's not channels. What you have is a broad array of the new social media, which had been in the headlines all this last month. All of the other components of what are defined as telecommunications and its infrastructure in the city. So I'm not here complaining about what y'all do. I'm complaining about the structure, about the system. There is no advisory board over the manager of the center and the government channel, although there is an advisory board over the CAT channel or the Europe Media channel. And there is one written into the educational channel, but they're revising that, and the university's going to have their own channel. So we're going to have 3 PEG channels, 2 of which do not have advisory boards that I know about, and I do not know what the complaint process is for them. They do a good job not knocking that. Larry Foley has done a magnificent job. He took a piece of nothing and turned it into a really award-winning channel. And I urge you to see the program that Ms. Nikita Reed produced that we saw last week. It's going to be shown on the CAT before long. We're calling it Your Media Channel? That's what?
Fayetteville Public Access Television.
Fayetteville Public Access Television. Anyway, we will have opportunity to look at the history of the access channel. We do not have a history of the government channel, and we don't have one of the educational channels. I hope you do that. I'll get to the rest of it next month. If you all will give me an opportunity as old business, I really hate to sit here for 2 hours, and I really applaud what you're saying about being in another room. But let's go back through it. My complaint and request first, and then we can take his responses. I'll take them any way you want to do it, Mr. Keach. And then we'll talk about the part that's incomplete as I see it in terms of reply to my complaint. Am I making sense? I have a letter that I've submitted 3 or 4 times over the last 4 or 5 months, and it's regarding these complaints. A similar complaint y'all talked about tonight. This board voted unanimously to have the CAT board meetings covered by the government channel. That has not been done. Now we have arguments about resources, etc. There are counter arguments about how that could be done and shown on the government channel. Now we'll get into some of the other specifics of how you got to be here in the first place and why I think it's time for the council itself to have an ad hoc subcommittee with a similar group of people from the city to look at some of the issues we're looking at. Thank you very much, unless you have some questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bemis. And I would like to echo some of the things that Mr. Bemis said. I mean, I certainly understand he has submitted documentation and he has submitted things that he wishes this board to consider, and it has been a several-month process. And one of the things that I wanted to attempt to do, beginning with this meeting, is to help move this process along. Mr. Bemis has expressed frustration, understandably so, and we've had issues with quorums, as Mr. Shepard has said. We've had issues with weather, and we have new members on the board. And I think it would be very helpful for everyone, from Mr. Bemis as an individual to every resident of Fayetteville and every member of the city council and everyone in the city administration, to be able to continue to look at these issues and to get to a resolution. And not the least of reason, which is that I think Mr. Bemis has shown a significant and enthusiastic involvement in these issues, and it's only fair that he get some resolution to this after his continued support of this. My attempt, and what I distributed to him and to you as a report on his complaints, is how I would like to move forward in reporting to you on any complaint that we receive, that I receive as the manager of the City of Fayetteville Television Center and as the city administration's representative in the operations of the access channels, because you as a board are tasked with facilitating dispute resolution. It is in Title III, Article 9 of the City Code. That is part of one of your duties as a board. Me, is one of my duties as your city administration representative is to keep you informed of those complaints and those disputes, and to also provide you with the city's perspective on those. So that is one part of a complaint process. A citizen bringing a complaint has their perspective, and then there's the different perspectives and different issues that have to be looked at whenever you as a board are attempting to facilitate a resolution to a dispute. That is what this document was intended to do, and I believe that we did. This is not, this was not intended to refute Mr. Bemis's complaint. This was not an attempt to dismiss it. It is merely an attempt to say this is the city's perspective regarding these issues based on what my understanding of the statutes are, the ordinances, and the policies that we operate under at this time. Now, that also means that in many cases, this board as a body, in your efforts to facilitate resolution of disputes, can advise the city council that we advise the city council you need to do this, because you can do that, and it's very appropriate for you to do that. So where we are on this, I wanted to clarify that as we go forward, and we have this, and to continue to try to support this whole process as we move forward.
So to understand, the complaint is there's not a formal complaint process.
That is one of Mr. Bemis's complaints, if I'm correct, is that there's not a formal documented complaint process in a lot of different areas of this that helps this whole thing along.
There is no document. For example, your administrative rules, which you folks haven't talked about yet. You'll have, that's where you all make up your rules. You can have a meeting, separate meeting, and discuss these under your administrative rules.
So,
You do not have a policy that takes either the new government channel policy or the CAT contract through to a complaint and back. Those are untested. They're in there, but they're untested as yet. They've changed from what they were. So all I'm saying is they're untested and they haven't been reviewed by y'all.
Well, we're very conscious of that we didn't, I don't remember who was actually here to vote to pass those on to the council, but it was, again, 3-1. I was not ready to pass them. I thought we were going to discuss them that night. So I apologize, Mr. Bemis, for our being unable to carry out the duty of discussing those things in great detail. And the reason we didn't have policy meetings in the last half of the year was that simply said we were finding it very difficult to get to record the meetings and broadcast the meetings. And as the board we are and what we are here to represent, I think is a group of people functioning in a small way inside a committee here, and absolutely being sure that we do no private discussion. We do not have private meetings and talk to public officials on this business. We've tried to get public officials or interested citizens to come talk to us here in this open forum. And if we have a committee meeting and it's not broadcast, then who else can you expect to have their meetings broadcast? For some years it was the school board, and was having things that, and people would say, well, government, that shouldn't be our responsibility because the educational channel is there, and they have access to it about half of the hours it is there. But finally, they've begun to cover all school board meetings with that equipment. But at one point, we were being pressed to see that the government channel covered city school system meetings because they were failing to do it. So it's simply wrong for this body to meet and discuss policy without doing it. I would love to have a social gathering with you guys, but I'm not going to get into the policy there. We'll be about other subjects.
Well, I would, if the board were so inclined, I'd be happy to head up a subcommittee to look into drafting a formal complaint process, as Mr. Geisler had suggested in his memo to us this evening.
And what is our current complaint process, just to be clear?
I don't think there is one.
Well, this
way I
right
understood
here
it
is
to be-
the procedure that was passed in the past few months.
Right, it goes to the
Mr.
channel manager, correct?
There is a set policy, there's a set procedure for complaints regarding programming on the Fayetteville government channel. There is a policy, there is a set procedure for complaints regarding programming and operations of the public access channel that goes through the public access operator, your media. Not wishing to try to make a debate out of this subject, but this is good illustration. We did receive a complaint. This is one of the other complaints that I needed to bring to your attention this evening. We did receive a complaint from a citizen regarding programming on the public access channel. The staff at your media followed this procedure to the letter. I was informed of the complaint, and in that process, the complainant contacted me directly, and I spoke with the complainant on the telephone directly. And with the understanding of having had the details of the complaint, because this process was followed, and I was able to have a discussion with the complainant, and she was able to express her complaint. She was able to have a conversation regarding it, and she was very satisfied with the outcome of our part of that issue, to the extent that I even asked her specifically, ma'am, would you like me to follow up in any way with you on this tomorrow, next week? And she said, no, thank you very much for your time. I understand where you are. So
And that was with you, not the communications director, correct? That was with that conversation was with you
that conversation was with me, since I, in this,
as the channel manager.
as a channel manager.
Okay.
And as the television center manager. That process was followed, and it worked. And she was informed of all of her options regarding that. So we haven't received any complaints regarding programming. We have not received any formal complaints. I have not, regarding programming decisions on the government channel. So as Mr. Bemis said, this process for the government channel has not been tried. It has not been proven. Now, as Mr. Pennington said, there is not a documented process for a resident or a citizen or an individual to bring a complaint to this board regarding the operations of the television center. That is not documented anywhere. There is not a documented process for an individual to bring a complaint or a concern to this board to be considered about any other type of telecommunication issue in the city, whether that is for cable operator or internet service or anything that has to do with telecommunications in the city. That's not there. It's mentioned in the city code that it is one of the duties of the board, but the process would come under your administrative rules, and it's not documented in those. And I'm here to assist
Just
you
as
in
a
developing that any way I may be.
Quick discussion between yourself and maybe Mr. Bemis and the board, just real quickly. The first things that come to mind is we have the ability to put those slides up on the message board with that kind of information as to how to contact the station manager or your board. We have the ability to push that out through the website. What other venues and what other options do we have to communicate whatever process this is?
Well, I don't think I'm not sure it's communicating that, but when you look at this portion of this, a committee comprised of, that's bad English, the way comprised is used there, but anyway, a committee comprising the director of communication, another city department director, that's unstated, a selected member of the telecommunication advisory board, and a selected member of the city council will review the appeal. That's foregoing several steps. That previously policy had always been that it came to this board and it was discussed. And then the option was for Mr. Bemis or anybody else who's had a complaint over the years to take it to the council if they're dissatisfied. That was clear.
That was the October
And
2010 that we had the same discussion.
do we have anything that tells us that process is not working?
Other than that, Mr. Bemis has had some standing complaints regarding that the process doesn't exist, is not documented, and as such.
I feel like we're in a catch-22 here.
It sounds like we might be,
we've
but
got
we've not received any complaints. The verbiage that Mr. Shepard just read is from the operating policies and procedures document of the Fayetteville Government Channel that was passed by city resolution, or resolution of the City Council in October of 2010. So that process stands by resolution of the City Council, and that's what we operate by today. Obviously, as a board, an advisory board of the City Council, you are, it's well within your purview to contact the City Council and say, we want to change this, or we feel like this should be changed. However, that is something that's there.
And while I understand what Mr. Bemis is requesting, at the same time, if we've not run into an issue where this has caused an issue, I'm not sure that if it's not broke, why are we fixing it, I guess is the question.
And from a pragmatic standpoint, the way we receive complaints 99% of the time is somebody picks up the phone and calls and says, I don't like X. I don't like that program. I don't like how you did that. That's 99% of how we receive our complaints. And they either call the number for public access, or they call me directly. Majority of them call the mayor's office directly, and then they're referred back to the proper entity to deal with. I know that Director of the Communication, Lindsley Smith, has, in this last situation, she got involved with that complaint about public access, and she referred that individual back to me instead of bypassing the documented process of complaint. And so I feel like that process is working well. On the government channel, again, nobody has emailed me or called me or sent me a letter or in any way said, I don't like that you played that program at that point in time. I appreciate feedback of all kinds of that way, particularly like a good example is like tonight with Mr. Shepard talking about, can we move this program schedule, this proposed program schedule around to provide more emphasis to the city council meeting and a quicker turnaround. That is invaluable feedback. And I would rather get it that way than put something in place and then all of a sudden have somebody call and say, oh, this is terrible, I'm filing a complaint. Okay, but people have the right to complain, and we want to have a process. We just haven't received any from the government channel side.
From our side, I think we've always had two options. It's either to take no action, which is an action in itself, or to recommend that somebody do something. Like if we were to be brought a complaint about some operation at the government channel, we might recommend writing a letter to Mr. Giesler saying, somebody brought us this complaint, do you think you might be able to change this? Or we could write a letter to the city council saying, a citizen brought us this complaint, we would like you to take action on this point. And some of these that have been discussed over the past few months that we haven't taken any action on, maybe we should have taken a formal vote of, we want to take no action on this.
I also know that there's one part of this that's missing that I've seen, and if you'll look at the verbiage that's in that I pulled from the contract for the public access operator, it says that the response will provide a written response to the complainant detailing the investigation of their complaint and any findings thereof. And I think that might be one part of this process that Mr. Pennington just described accurately that's not there. And is, where is it when once you as a board makes a decision that we're going to do X, when and how do we communicate back to the person who's filed the complaint what it is that's going to happen in a very consistent way, and that we also maintain those as records so that they can be looked at sometime in the future. And I think that's also an important part of this. I think this is a very important thing to be looking at. As I said in my report, I encourage the board to continue to consider this. It might be within Mr. Shepard's desire to try to put together a subgroup to look at this issue, maybe to tweak it a little bit or develop some really good, solid issues, identify where the missing pieces are. I know from my personal involvement with this is that I have not ever actually, as your representative, I have not ever drafted a letter and communicated that or communicated the actions of the board in any formal way to someone who's filed a complaint. So I know that part is maybe not being executed well.
Well, see, the difference in this, what was passed, and as I say, I really expected the night it was voted and passed that it would be the actual version that existed before, the one that our committee, policy committee worked on for a couple of years to revise, and these would be compared. The reason, as I said, we didn't do it in another committee meeting, it would have been an unrecorded meeting as things stood at that time. So I did expect that we would discuss it and we would compare these things. This has, again, Director of Communication, City Department, another City Department Director, Water and Sewer man has to leave his office and come over to meet, and then one member of this board, which historically it was before this whole board, and a selected member of the City Council. I don't know who in this room or in this building, except the mayor, who I hope is home in bed by now, but who can select a city council member to be on a committee like this? See, this, I don't know who's going to have that power over the city council members.
Well, since the Fayetteville Government Channel is a division of the mayor's office, I would assume the mayor would be able to select.
Well, the government channel, the government channel manager works under the Director of Communication, and is hired by the.
She'll turn the page. It says, since the board is advisory body of the city council, any complaints regarding the performance of the board would most appropriately be directed to either the mayor's office or an alderman. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's what we discussed before.
Yeah, that was the solution previously.
I guess the
It
question
left here
becomes,
to the council.
is this system functional? Do we have any reason to believe it's not?
Mr. Bemis thinks that his complaints are not addressed appropriately by the board.
And
I think that our inaction on some of his complaints are an action in themselves.
I would agree with that. Mr. Bemis, have any of these complaints been taken through this process?
We have chosen not to take action on anything thus far.
Okay, this is a new process, so it hasn't been tested. But the other one, I will say, Mr. Bemis, that there was no occasion when you went directly to the council after you were dissatisfied here. Is that right? Let Mr. Bemis come to the podium at this point, please, Mr. Giesler.
Thank you. I thought I was going to let you guys off light tonight.
Well, we're looking at the clock.
You have not heard my complaint. That was what I said when I began. You've heard a response that Mr. Giesler has made as what he interprets to be my complaint. He's got part of it, but he does not have my complaint. I gave you all 2 documents that were highlighted. Some of you may not have received them. Did you receive my documents that were highlighted?
Yes, I've received several.
And if not, I'll send them out again. Those gave very specific places within the policy and the contract that I think the city has overstepped its role. That's as nicely as I'm not accusing Mr. Giesler. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm saying that you folks are there to prevent the city from influencing the channels.
So my question to you, Mr.
And
Bemis,
incidentally, that's been taken out of the policy. But if you don't have that role, what is your role? And that's what I think the ad hoc committee could do. Now, if you have a specific question, regarding my complaint, I'd be happy to answer it, but I prefer to do that next week when we're all a little fresher.
To be clear here, a complaint was brought forward, and we did not follow. We chose to not decide on it, which was action itself, as Mr. Pennington has said. And at that point, did you take it to the city council?
I'm sorry, would you rephrase that?
You had a complaint.
Yes.
And we have chosen to not make a decision on that, which is what Mr. Pennington is saying. Our action on the complaint is not to not take action. The question to you is, have you taken that complaint to the city council?
No, because I understood the process was that you folks would provide advice for me. Now, if that is your decision, that was done in September, you folks simply didn't respond. There was no decision made, and that leaves the complainant, when you go to the council and say, well, what did the telecom board say? And I say, nothing. And that's where you are, and that goes to what you were saying, Mr. Geisler, about not having a specific process for responding from you all to the complainant. When I go to a council member, I better have my ducks in a row. Otherwise, he's going to say, forget it. I wouldn't blame him. But let's get into that next week, and I'll go through there with you item by item. I will send each of you the same documents that I've sent for the last 4 or 5 months, and we weren't able to have a complete board meeting.
Well, Jim, I really wish you had gone to the council a few times, because you're pretty persuasive, and that would have helped, because there was people were mostly at a loss about what this body could do in several of those instances, as far as actually fixing it. And as you say, we
Mr.
that
Chairman,
was before I got on the board. Some of these things were going on.
Yes,
And
I have been before the council when you passed the policy, and their question was, Mr. Bemis, why didn't the telecommunications board, what would they do? You were speaking, I believe, that night. Mm-hmm. They asked me questions. Well, I think that's their responsibility to keep better tabs on you folks. You're supposed to give a yearly report. You're supposed to give a quarterly report. Mr. Geisler and Ms. Shelley, they have to give reports. You folks don't. Nobody evaluates what your board is doing in a very systematic way.
Out of curiosity, who is what ward or who is your council member? Who is your alderman?
I'm sorry, you don't have a mic, do you, Mr. Davis?
I'm sorry. What ward? What ward are you located in?
I'm not in the city anymore. I was when I filed these complaints a year ago.
So you currently do not live in the city of Fayetteville?
I am a cat producer, and I was a member of a community member of the cat policy committee. I don't know if I am anymore. I have to have that interpreted.
And you served on this body.
Yes, I have.
What year was it?
I've got a blog that I sent you, the web address. I'm preparing both a blog and a companion wiki. It's going to have all the old information, which you don't have anyplace else. Mr. Geisler operates with almost no documents that were left over by the previous administration. And most of what we're talking about tonight was initiated by the previous administration. So I find it very difficult to talk to a board that's had 10 chairs in 10 years, 5 chairs in the last 5 years. I don't know how many board members, and there aren't but 3 left from when I filed my complaint last year. Mm-hmm. So you can't do business that way, folks. You'd go out of business real quick if you tried to do that anyway.
Well, it wasn't you, but somebody said we ought to pay people on this board. People would line up to get on it. But
I think you got the most important job in town. You're talking about freedom of speech, and I'm a big, passionate believer in that, and I think that's the reason I'm up here. Y'all protect not the facilities that the city runs and administers. You protect the airwaves, the channels. The city does not own those. And that's one of the fundamental problems we have, that people think that the city somehow has control over the channels. They don't. That was given to you by the FCC and the Telecom Act of 1996. You folks know that better than I do. So we're going to have to get into that at the next meeting, I hope.
Thank you, sir, very much.
I think it might behoove us to look into the formal complaint process as a way to put things to rest. If a complaint that was brought forth in September, which I think was overruled by the board's actions in recommending the city's draft policy to the board, I think that should have been enough to say that, no, I don't think the city's overstepping its boundaries. If we need to put in place a formal process that says, we read your complaint, we believe it has no merit, and we are going to take no action on it. Or we are going to take some action, and we'll let you know what that is.
We'll advise the city council, for instance,
Something.
on this issue.
Do we need to create a
Let's-
subcommittee to do that?
I'd be happy to head that up.
Wouldn't be hard.
Would you?
I would
And I will
be happy to.
join you as well.
There you go.
Does that include you?
Sure,
Well, gentlemen,
absolutely.
let's see, do I have a motion to, let's
So
make
what
a
are we
motion.
gonna call
So
this?
moved.
Create this committee. And what are we calling it?
Formal
The
complaint?
complaint process subcommittee.
There you go.
Why don't we just call it the existing policy committee, because this is part of policy instead of making a new one? Would that work for you guys?
I want it to be specific.
Yeah, because that's a little,
We'd have to create every part of the policy.
we
would
don't,
have to
That's
be
fine.
created.
we don't write policy, so that would be
It's
a
an
little
internal
confusing.
policy. I
No,
think
this
this is,
board is to write the
It's
policy.
to the internal.
This is
Okay,
the
yeah.
job,
You can call it either way.
yeah. This is the first time
Complaints and appeals.
that the city
Subcommittee.
administration has written
Complaints
the
and
policy.
appeals subcommittee,
It
all
was the
right.
committee, the council, and the people they appointed to this board that created
this
policy.
this would merely be an internal policy.
Okay.
Our telecommunication board procedural rules, not the telecom or the Fayetteville government channel rules. This would be how we handle a complaint that's brought to our board. And it wouldn't affect anything that's done by Mr. Giesler, by Ms. Shelley, by the Fayetteville government channel, or by your media, I'm sorry. It
Okay,
would be
well, let's
just that.
set a date. Do you all agree that you want to be?
March 17th is the
Next telecom board meeting. You'd like to do it before then, I assume.
absolutely. It's a month.
So what date in March, late February?
Let's see,
I don't even know what my schedule is going to be like the next month. I start a new job Monday.
Where are you?
I'm going to the Niblock Law Firm here in town.
Oh, good, great.
Can we email, decide a time,
Absolutely.
and then notify the city clerk?
I think that might be our
Yes,
best option,
and we'll have to do that to get,
because I can only put
I
half
think
my
that would be
calendar as well.
a little more productive.
okay. So we will do a email that will be available to the whole board, and same mailing list.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bemis and Mr. Marvin Hilton are two members of the public who request that they receive the email. The whole public has a right to every email that goes through any of these boards between individuals on the business of the board. Setting a time and date of a meeting does not sound like action, but again, in the spirit of being a good example as a telecommunication board, then I think we should make it public to all of them.
Well, I don't know that I have their email addresses, but I'll certainly keep Fritz and Lindsley and you and the rest of the board in the loop on my
The ones
initial email.
where I've sent you the,
They're listed there on
They're
that email.
listed.
We can,
Oh,
we can
okay.
just
All
reply
right.
back to that message.
and
Okay.
Shelley as a cat manager always needs the information on these meetings where she's expected to present.
I'll send it to everybody I can
So-
find.
But
I'll send out the initial kind of setup email if that's all right.
well, the email that I sent with the the agenda back on
That includes everything.
weekend, I had everybody added in. The one I didn't have that should have been on there was Ann Shelley because I didn't have her actual email address. And I sent it to Heather, who's the office manager for CAT, to see that it was in the CAT organization by that time. Okay, anything else? And that will be decided by email. Any other?
The only agenda suggestion I would have is to add progress of the subcommittee.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's fair enough.
Okay,
Any announcements?
any announcements from members?
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
All right.
We're adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.